He is our hope, our sunshine, but don't take his smile for granted. Behind J-Hope's bright energy stands a man shaped by emotional pressure, discipline, perfectionism, and an incredible inner strength as his birth chart reveals. Stay with me and I'll tell you all about it. Hello stars, welcome back to my channel where I analyze the horoscopes of your favorite celebrities. If you're new here, my name is Beatrice, I'm a professional astrologer, and today we're taking a closer look at the birth chart of BTS member Jung Hoseok, whom you also know by his stage name J-Hope. Quick info before we start. My next video will be about V, Kim Tae-young. Stay close if you want to find out why he is actually the maknae, the youngest member of BTS. But back to J-Hope. His natal horoscope is fascinating because at first glance it almost feels like a contradiction. J-Hope is one of the strongest performers in the world, someone known for explosive stage presence, energy, confidence, and movement. Yet his birth chart contains almost no fire signs at all. In astrology, fire is usually connected with passion, boldness, spontaneity, performance, and visible charisma. Many people would expect a dancer and performer like J-Hope to have a chart full of fire energy. But he doesn't. Instead, his chart is deeply emotional, sensitive, intuitive, and controlled. His energy does not come from impulsive fire. It comes from emotional intensity, pressure, discipline, and inner drive. And honestly, this explains something very important about him. The smile, the positivity, the sunshine image are real, but they are also work. They are something he consciously creates. This chart does not belong to someone who is naturally carefree all the time. It belongs to someone who learned how to become light even while carrying emotional depth inside. One of the most important placements in his chart is his Aquarius sun at the critical 29th degree. The sun in astrology represents the core self, identity, life force, and purpose. Aquarius is the sign of individuality, originality, groups, social impact, and doing things differently. People with strong Aquarius energy often feel slightly different from others, even when surrounded by many people. They want to contribute something meaningful to society, but they also need freedom to be themselves. The 29th degree is called the critical degree. It creates intensity, pressure, and urgency. It often feels like the soul is trying to fully master the energy of that sign before moving on. So his Aquarius qualities become stronger, louder, and more important in J-Hope's life path. He feels a deep responsibility toward the collective. His identity is tied to helping, inspiring, and emotionally affecting other people. Knowing this, his famous "I'm your hope, you're my hope" hits different. But right next to the sun, we find Saturn, the planet of discipline, pressure, responsibility, and maturity. Saturn is often heavy energy. It makes people work hard, doubt themselves, and feel they must constantly improve. When Saturn touches the sun, the person often grows up emotionally faster than others. They may feel responsible for everyone around them. They can become extremely professional, reliable, and respected, but also very hard on themselves internally. This is one of the clearest signs in the chart that behind the cheerful image there is somebody extremely serious about his works. Fans often talk about him as BTS's pillar of positivity, but also as the strict dance leader who notices every mistake during practice. This duality is completely visible here. The softness and warmth are real, but so is the perfectionism. The sun is also connected with Mercury, the planet of communication and thinking, and Mercury is retrograde in Pisces. Pisces is an emotional zodiac sign, artistic, intuitive, imaginative, and deeply sensitive. It also represents music. People with Mercury in Pisces do not think in straight lines. They think through feelings, images, moods, and intuition. They often understand emotions before words. But Mercury retrograde makes everything more internalized. It can create self-doubt, overthinking, or difficulty expressing thoughts exactly the way they want to. This is one reason why public speaking or leadership roles may not come naturally or easily to J-Hope, even if he performs confidently on stage. Dancing is different. Movement allows him to express emotions without needing to fully explain them verbally. And this is important. Many people misunderstand soft Pisces energy as weakness. But in his chart, Pisces becomes powerful because it is connected with Saturn. Saturn gives structure to emotions. It turns sensitivity into discipline. It allows somebody to transform emotional chaos into art, choreography, performance, and emotional storytelling. The conjunction of Mercury, Venus, and Saturn in Pisces is one of the most beautiful parts of the chart. Venus is the planet of love, beauty, art, harmony, and attraction. In Pisces, Venus is extremely compassionate and emotionally deep. This placement often creates artistic talent because the person can emotionally touch others through music, dance, visuals, or emotional atmosphere. And when Venus joins Saturn, love and art become serious. This is not shallow creativity. This is somebody who puts enormous effort into creating emotional impact. It also suggests that affection and kindness are not fake performances. He genuinely cares very deeply about people around him. But Saturn again creates restraint. It may be difficult for him to fully relax emotionally or show vulnerability openly all the time. This combination also explains why so many people feel emotionally comforted by him. Pisces energy absorbs emotions around it. It senses moods almost like a sponge. He probably notices emotional shifts in people very quickly, even without words being spoken. His moon, which represents emotions and emotional safety, is in Taurus. It needs stability, loyalty, physical comfort, and emotional consistency. This placement often creates calming energy. Even when everything around them becomes chaotic, people with a Taurus moon try to stay grounded. They usually comfort others through presence rather than dramatic emotional displays. This moon also explains why his energy can feel warm and reliable. People often describe Taurus moon individuals as emotionally soothing. They make others feel safe. But Taurus is also stubborn and resistant to emotional pressure. Once hurt or emotionally exhausted, they may withdraw quietly instead of openly exploding. Another important part of the chart is the strong Scorpio energy. J-Hope's North Node, which represents soul growth and destiny, is conjunct Pluto, the planet of transformation, intensity, power, crisis, and rebirth. This is a very powerful placement. It suggests a life path connected with deep transformation, influence over others, emotional intensity, and learning how to handle power responsibly. People with Pluto conjunct the North Node often experience situations that force them to become stronger psychologically. They are not meant to live superficially. Their soul pushes them toward depth, truth, emotional honesty, and transformation. Even if they appear bright on the outside, their inner world is much more complex. This placement also creates magnetic influence. People feel something powerful from them even without understanding why. Pluto gives emotional gravity. It creates fascination. It also connects with survival, resilience, and the ability to rise stronger after difficult periods. And this placement becomes even more interesting because his chart repeatedly speaks about power hidden beneath softness. The world sees the sunshine, but Pluto shows the survivor underneath. Hoseok's Pluto North Node conjunction was one of the first things that caught my attention when looking at his birth chart. It explains a lot about him. Besides what I already said, I want to mention something else. Because of this conjunction, I believe that at some later point in his life, he might become a powerful, highly influential figure, possibly someone whose impact reaches far beyond the music industry. Displacement is often connected with people who deeply affect society, influence large groups of people, or step into positions of power and transformation. I would not be surprised if one day his voice carried weight not only in art and culture, but also in bigger social or even political conversations. Mars, the planet of action, ambition, and drive, is in Aquarius and forms a tense square with Jupiter in Scorpio. Squares in astrology create friction and energy. They force movement. This is one of the likely reasons why he can have such strong performance energy despite lacking planets in fire signs. His chart generates internal pressure instead. Mars square Jupiter creates huge ambition, a strong will to win, and physical energy. It pushes people to constantly exceed limits. Sometimes it can even create restlessness because the person always feels they can do more, improve more, achieve more. Jupiter in Scorpio adds emotional intensity and psychological depth to his drive. He does not simply want success on a surface level. Scorpio wants meaning, emotional truth, and transformation. Now let's also take a look at some asteroids. Sappho, connected with artistic sensitivity, emotional beauty, and creative expression, sits at another critical 29th degree in Pisces. Again, we see this theme of emotional art becoming extremely important in his life. His creativity is not random entertainment. It carries emotional weight and vulnerability. The chart also contains a small talent triangle involving karma, Sappho, and the Pluto North Node conjunction. This suggests natural talent connected with emotional expression, transformation, and artistic influence. It almost feels like art itself becomes part of his soul mission. And then we have another fascinating placement. The asteroid Nike conjunct Black Moon Lilith in Aries. Nike represents victory and achievement. Black Moon Lilith represents hidden parts of the self, raw instinct, rebellion, and emotional independence. Together in Aries, they create somebody who becomes powerful when refusing to be controlled by expectations. But Nike and Lilith square Uranus and Neptune in Capricorn, planets connected with systems, public image, dreams, structure, and society. This can create inner tension between individuality and external expectations, between the real self and the role society wants him to play. The deeper we go into J-Hope's chart, the more we begin to understand something important. His energy does not come from simplicity or ease. It comes from tension, movement, emotional pressure, and the constant need to balance very different parts of himself. This may even explain where so much of his performance energy comes from. Because while his chart lacks planets in fire signs, it is full of powerful aspect patterns that create internal motion. In astrology, tension does not only create stress or crisis. Sometimes it creates ambition, movement, stamina, artistic expression, and the need to release energy physically. For a dancer, that can become incredibly important. One of the first things we notice is the bucket pattern. Almost all planets stay grouped together, while one planet stands alone like the handle of the bucket. That isolated planet becomes extremely important. It acts almost like a focal point through which the rest of the chart expresses itself. And in his case, the isolated planet is the moon in Taurus. This is fascinating because the moon represents emotions, instinct, the body's emotional rhythm, and inner comfort. Taurus is deeply connected with the physical senses, rhythm, movement, touch, and body awareness. This creates a natural connection between emotions and the body. So while the rest of his chart is emotionally complex, mentally intense, and psychologically heavy, the Taurus moon becomes the release point. It channels everything into physical control, rhythm, movement, and stability. Dancing may not only be performance for Hoseok, it may actually regulate his emotions and help him stay grounded internally. This also explains why his stage presence feels controlled rather than chaotic. Fire dancers often explode outward emotionally, but Taurus dancers move with precision, sensuality, rhythm, and physical awareness. There is control inside the movement. Then we move into one of the strongest tension patterns in the chart, the Grand Cross. A Grand Cross in astrology is created when 4 points in the chart challenge each other at the same time. This creates a lot of internal pressure, but also enormous movement. People with Grand Crosses often feel like they can never fully relax internally. They are constantly balancing competing needs, emotions, responsibilities, or identities. In J-Hope's chart, the Grand Cross connects Chiron in Virgo, Saturn, Mercury, Venus in Pisces, Hera in Gemini, and the Pluto North Node conjunction in Scorpio. Chiron, often called a wounded healer, represents emotional wounds, insecurity, but also healing and wisdom gained through pain. In Virgo, Chiron can create perfectionism, self-criticism, and constant pressure to improve. These people often notice every flaw in themselves before anyone else does. And now remember his role inside BTS, the disciplined dance leader who notices mistakes during practice. That is very Virgo Chiron energy. The desire to perfect details can become almost endless. Opposite Chiron stands Saturn, Mercury, and Venus. In Pisces, they want emotional flow, softness, intuition, creativity, and emotional freedom. Virgo wants control, improvement, and precision. So inside him, there is a constant battle between perfection and emotional surrender. This alone could already create enormous artistic energy, because dancers often work exactly between those two worlds, discipline and emotional expression. But the Grand Cross adds even more tension through Hera in Gemini and Pluto and the North Node in Scorpio. Asteroid Hera represents commitment, loyalty, and relationship dynamics. In Gemini, it creates mental overstimulation, curiosity, and the need to understand many perspectives at once. Meanwhile, Pluto and the North Node in Scorpio pull him toward emotional intensity, transformation, depth, and psychological truth. So part of him wants lightness and movement, while another part constantly searches for emotional depth and meaning. Again, we see duality. Sunshine on the outside, emotional intensity underneath. This grand cross creates somebody who is constantly evolving internally. Restlessness becomes fuel, pressure becomes movement, emotional tension becomes performance energy. This may be one of the hidden reasons why he can command the stage with such intensity despite lacking planets in fire signs. The chart creates motion through internal friction instead. Another fascinating pattern here is the T-square involving the asteroids Juno in Scorpio, Ceres in Taurus, and Valentine in Leo. A T-square is another tension pattern that creates emotional pressure and drive. Juno, connected with deep emotional bonds and commitment, sits in Scorpio, making relationships emotionally intense and transformative. Ceres, connected with nurturing and emotional care, is in Taurus, wanting stability, peace, comfort, and emotional safety. But both clash with Valentine in Leo, an asteroid connected with love, affection, and emotional warmth. Leo energy wants recognition, visibility, affection, and emotional expression. So this pattern creates tension between emotional safety, emotional intensity, and the desire to openly give and receive warmth. Then we come to the Troller pattern, which is incredibly fitting for him. The Troller works like a psychological and emotional net. It gathers experiences, emotions, observations, and energy beneath the surface before expressing them outwardly. People with this pattern often absorb far more than they show. They quietly process life internally and transform it into art, expression, or emotional understanding. By the way, Suga also has this kind of pattern in his chart. If you want to watch my video where I analyzed his natal horoscope, you'll find the link in the description. Back to J-Hope's stroller that connects Hera in Gemini, Valentine in Leo, Juno in Scorpio, and Saturn, Mercury, Venus in Pisces. This combination creates somebody who constantly observes people, emotions, affection, loyalty, relationships, and emotional atmosphere. It is almost impossible for him not to emotionally absorb what happens around him. He supports others emotionally, senses the mood in the room, and carries emotional responsibility quietly. But the troller also creates privacy. These people rarely show everything they feel. A lot happens internally before it becomes visible externally. This is why someone can appear bright, friendly, and emotionally open while still keeping deep emotional layers hidden underneath. And finally, he has a pattern called stage in his chart, another incredibly symbolic configuration for somebody whose entire life happens in front of millions of people. The stage pattern is connected with observing humanity, understanding emotions, adapting to different roles, and connecting different worlds or perspectives. Persons with this pattern often feel like both performers and observers at the same time. They can emotionally connect with people while still keeping part of themselves protected. His stage pattern connects Vesta in Aries, Valentine in Leo, Chiron in Virgo, and Venus in Pisces. Vesta represents devotion and dedication. In Aries, it creates enormous focus and drive. Valentine in Leo adds emotional warmth and charisma. Chiron in Virgo adds vulnerability and perfectionism. Venus in Pisces adds compassion, artistic sensitivity, and emotional softness. Together, this creates somebody who can deeply emotionally affect people through performance while also carefully observing everything around him. And this is exactly what makes Jung Hoseok such a fascinating performer. He is not simply dancing, he is emotionally communicating. In the end, these patterns reveal something powerful. His energy does not come from natural fire. It comes from emotional intensity, inner tension, discipline, observation, sensitivity, and transformation. His chart creates movement because it cannot stay still internally. And maybe that is why his performances feel so alive. Not because he is escaping emotion, but because he is channeling enormous emotional complexity into movement, rhythm, expression, and art. When we put all these pieces together, J-Hope's chart tells the story of somebody far more complex than the image people first see on the surface. Yes, he is warmth, light, energy, rhythm, and hope. But underneath that bright smile is somebody deeply emotional, observant, disciplined, and psychologically intense. His chart is full of pressure, tension, sensitivity, and transformation. And instead of breaking under that weight, he channels it into performance and connection with people. Maybe that is exactly why so many people feel comforted by him. Because his positivity does not feel fake or shallow. It feels earned. This is not the chart of somebody who shines because life is easy. It is the chart of somebody who consciously chooses light again and again, even while carrying emotional depth inside. And now we are almost at the end of our BTS astrology journey. There is only one member left. In the next video, we will dive into the fascinating birth chart of Kim Taeyong. I will tell you why V is actually the real maknae of BTS. And once all 7 individual chart analyses are complete, we will begin exploring some of the most talked about BTS relationship dynamics and ships, including connections like Taekook and Jikook. We'll look at their chemistry, emotional connection, tensions, and the special dynamics that fans find so fascinating. Until next time, shine bright like the stars.